In a quiet suburban neighborhood, the houses lined up like colorful candies along a neatly paved street. Each home had its own charm, with white picket fences and blooming flower gardens that added to the picturesque scene. The residents often waved to each other from their porches, sharing small talk about their day or the weather. However, beneath this friendly facade lay an underlying tension due to the strict Homeowners Association, HOA. The HOA enforced a long list of rules that dictated everything from lawn care to holiday decorations. People knew better than to break these rules, fearing hefty fines or even worse, visits from the notorious Karen, a self-appointed enforcer of the regulations. With her clipboard always in hand, she patrolled the neighborhood ready to pounce on any noise or mess that caught her attention. Though many residents tried to stay on her good side, whispers of her unreasonable complaints spread through the community like wildfire. It was a place where everyone felt the pressure to follow the rules, but Karen's reputation for being particularly harsh turned neighbors into wary friends. Little did they know, this would soon lead to chaos as one neighbor pushed back against her relentless scrutiny. Karen was not just any resident, she was the embodiment of the neighborhood's strict rules and regulations. With her perfectly coiffed hair and sharp glasses perched on her nose, she strode confidently through the streets with a clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning for any sign of mischief or disorder. Known to her neighbors as the rule enforcer, Karen took her role in the Homeowners Association very seriously, believing that it was her duty to maintain the neighborhood's pristine appearance. She had a knack for spotting even the tiniest infractions, whether it was a lawn that needed mowing or a dog barking too loudly. Residents often braced themselves when they saw her approaching, knowing that a friendly chat could quickly turn into a complaint about their flower arrangements or fence colors. Behind her stern demeanor lay a deep-seated need to control everything around her. Karen's complaints echoed through the community like a dark cloud, causing anxiety among those who lived nearby. While many tried to avoid her gaze and keep their heads down, there were whispers of rebellion brewing. Some neighbors began to wonder if it was time to stand up against Karen's relentless scrutiny, but no one could have predicted just how far things would spiral out of control. One morning, as the sun began to rise, Karen was jolted from her sleep by a loud roar that pierced the peaceful ambience of the neighborhood. It was the unmistakable sound of her neighbor's Ferrari, a flashy red sports car that seemed to come alive with a powerful growl every day. The engine's rumble echoed down the street, cutting through the quiet and shaking her windows. Fuming, Karen climbed out of bed and peered through her curtains, watching as the sleek vehicle sped away, leaving a cloud of exhaust in its wake. Her annoyance grew with each passing day, feeling that the noise was an affront to the tranquility she believed the neighborhood deserved. Determined to take action, she decided it was time to file a formal noise complaint with the HOA. With her clipboard ready to note down details, Karen marched over to her neighbor's house. She felt justified in her mission to restore peace, convinced that bringing her complaint to the HOA would put an end to the daily disturbance once and for all. Little did she know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change everything in the neighborhood. After Karen filed her noise complaint, the tension in the neighborhood escalated quickly. Her neighbor, Mark, who owned the Ferrari, was shocked to receive a notice from the HOA about the complaint. Once friendly chats over the white picket fence turned into heated exchanges. Mark confronted Karen outside her house one afternoon, frustration boiling over. "Do you really think I'm making that much noise?" he asked, arms crossed defiantly. "It's just my car. It's not like I'm hosting a rock concert." Karen stood firm, her clipboard still clutched tightly in her hand. "It's not just about you, Mark. This is about keeping our neighborhood peaceful. You're ruining it for everyone." The argument drew the attention of other neighbors, who watched with bated breath as their previously friendly relationship crumbled. Whispers circulated as more residents began to take sides, some supporting Karen's right to complain while others felt Mark should be allowed to enjoy his car. As tensions flared, both Karen and Mark dug in their heels, unwilling to back down. The atmosphere in the neighborhood shifted from camaraderie to conflict, igniting a feud that threatened to tear apart the community they once loved. Unbeknownst to them, this was just the beginning of an even bigger clash ahead. As the days passed, Karen's anger simmered beneath the surface. The arguments with Mark replayed in her mind, and each recollection fueled her resolve to take drastic action. Late one night, she sat down at her kitchen table with a pen and paper, sketching out her plan. She visualized herself stealthily approaching the Ferrari under the cover of darkness, armed with spray paint and a match. In her mind, this act was not just vandalism, it was a bold statement against what she viewed as Mark's disrespect for neighborhood peace. "If he thinks he can disturb us without consequences, he's got another thing coming," she muttered to herself, feeling empowered by the thought of reclaiming control. As she plotted, Karen carefully selected the colors she would use, vivid reds and blacks that would dazzle yet offend. She even considered writing a note to accompany her handiwork, something witty that would make it clear this was not just a prank but a lesson. With each detail she devised, Karen felt more convinced that this plan would finally bring Mark to his senses. Little did she realize that her choice to act on her vengeance would set off a series of events far beyond any lesson she intended to teach. The night was dark and still, the air thick with tension as Karen slipped out of her house, heart racing with adrenaline. She had waited for this moment, feeling both nervous and empowered as she crept toward Mark's driveway. The Ferrari, gleaming under the moonlight, looked like a target just waiting for her wrath. Armed with spray paint and matches, she felt a wicked thrill wash over her. With her first stroke of vivid red paint across the sleek surface, a sense of satisfaction surged within her. "This will show him," she whispered to herself as she continued to cover the car with disrespectful words and symbols. Each spray unleashed her pent-up frustration, and as she finished her graffiti masterpiece, she stepped back to admire her work with a triumphant smile. But the real culmination of her plan was yet to come. Filled with a misguided sense of justice, Karen pulled out a small firework she had brought along. As the flames ignited and grew larger, consuming the car in their fiery embrace, she felt exhilarated. Watching the flames dance illuminated her face, it was a moment of dark triumph. Little did she know that this reckless act would lead to overwhelming consequences that no one could foresee, including herself. The morning after the fire, the neighborhood was abuzz with chaos. News of Karen's vandalism spread like wildfire through social media, as neighbors shared photos and videos of the burning Ferrari. Shocked reactions flooded in, and soon, a group gathered near the charred remains of the car, whispering about the audacity of Karen's actions. Unbeknownst to her, Mark wasn't just the annoyed neighbor, he was also her landlord. As he scrolled through his phone later that day and saw images of his prized possession engulfed in flames, a wave of disbelief washed over him. He felt a mix of anger and betrayal. How could someone he had once gotten along with do something so destructive? Fueled by outrage, Mark decided to take action. He swiftly contacted his attorney to discuss the repercussions of Karen's attack on his property. The realization that he couldn't let this slide hit hard, his next step would be to initiate foreclosure proceedings on her home. As he contemplated the legal process ahead, there was no doubt in his mind, Karen's reckless act had crossed a line that would alter both their lives forever. Mark sat in his office, still reeling from the shock of Karen's actions. The rage that had bubbled up inside him was now channeled into a calm determination as he drafted the necessary paperwork for the foreclosure proceedings. He knew that confronting her directly would only lead to more conflict and drama, which he wanted to avoid. Instead, he aimed to hit her where it hurt most, her home. With each stroke of his pen on the legal documents, Mark felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. He never imagined that his neighbor would resort to such destruction, especially someone he had once considered an ally. The sense of betrayal cut deep, and he felt it was important to make a stand not only for himself but also for the integrity of their community. As he filed the paperwork with his attorney, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. He knew that initiating foreclosure would send shockwaves through the neighborhood, igniting discussions among residents about right and wrong. The once peaceful community was now on the brink of turmoil, all because of one impulsive night fueled by anger and vengeance. Mark steeled himself for what lay ahead, knowing he had crossed an unavoidable line in this escalating feud. As news of the foreclosure proceedings against Karen spread throughout the neighborhood, a wave of gossip and judgment followed in its wake. Neighbors gathered in small cliques outside their homes, whispering about the once feared rule enforcer, who had now become the subject of their scrutiny. Gone were the days when Karen could walk confidently down the street. Now, she felt every eye follow her, assessing, judging, and condemning. Karen's heart sank with each passing day as she overheard conversations filled with disdain. "Can you believe she did that?" one neighbor exclaimed. "Now she's facing foreclosure. She brought this upon herself." The community, which had once leaned toward supporting her strict enforcement of rules, now seemed united in disdain for her reckless behavior. Isolation set in quickly for Karen. No longer greeted with friendly waves or cheerful hellos, she felt alone in a place that had once felt like home. The judgment weighed heavily on her, even affecting her mental state as she grappled with regret for her impulsive actions. What started as a quest for control had spiraled into a nightmare, leaving her on the verge of losing not only her home but also her standing in the community she had tried so hard to protect and control. The tension in the air was palpable as Karen stood outside her home, her heart pounding with anxiety. Mark approached, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. This was their long-awaited confrontation, and both were prepared for a showdown that had been brewing for weeks. "Karen," Mark began, his voice steady but strained, "what were you thinking? You didn't just vandalize my car, you destroyed our trust and respect in this community." His words hung heavy between them, sharp and piercing. Karen felt a surge of defiance. "You don't understand. I did it to protect our neighborhood from the noise. You think you can just flaunt your car without consequences?" Mark shook his head in disbelief. "It was just a car. You took it too far. Now I'm forced to take action against you." As they exchanged heated words, onlookers gathered nearby, their whispers filling the silence created by the escalating argument. Karen's hands balled into fists as she realized how isolated she had become, even her allies were now spectators to her downfall. In that moment, both realized how far they had fallen from their once friendly relationship. What had started as a simple noise complaint had spiraled into a battle that neither could win without significant losses. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Karen found herself sitting alone in her living room, staring at the walls that once felt like a sanctuary. The weight of her actions crashed down upon her, and she could hardly recognize the person she had become. What had started as a mission to protect her neighborhood had turned into a personal nightmare, alienating her from friends and neighbors alike. As she reflected on her impulsive decision to vandalize Mark's Ferrari, a wave of regret washed over her. She thought about how she had let anger blind her to the consequences of her actions. Was it really worth it, she whispered to herself, feeling the sting of betrayal not only from Mark but from everyone who had once respected her. Karen's heart ached as she recalled the warmth of friendly conversations and laughter shared with her neighbors. Now, those memories felt distant, replaced by whispers of judgment and scorn. She realized that her quest for control had not saved their community, it had destroyed the very fabric that held them together. In that moment of solitude, Karen understood that change was necessary. Whether or not it was too late to repair the damage was uncertain, but one thing was clear, she needed to confront her mistakes and reclaim the person she once was. In the end, Karen's story serves as a poignant reminder of the dangers of allowing anger to dictate one's actions. What began as a desire to protect her neighborhood spiraled into a series of reckless choices that led to her downfall. By choosing revenge over reason, she lost not only her home but also the respect and friendship of those around her. As she sat alone in her empty house, Karen understood that her quest for control had been misguided. The isolation she now felt was a direct consequence of her decisions, and she wished she had sought a more constructive way to address her grievances. Instead of fostering community, her actions had driven a wedge between her and her neighbors, turning allies into adversaries. This dramatic chain of events highlights how revenge can blind us to the broader implications of our choices. In seeking to punish Mark, Karen inadvertently punished herself, leading to personal and communal chaos. As she looked out at the neighborhood she once loved, Karen realized that healing would require more than just time, it would demand accountability and a genuine effort to rebuild the trust she had shattered. The lesson lingered painfully in her mind, Sometimes, the path to resolution lies in understanding, not retaliation.